NGT passed a first order in April of 2023, which basically said that they don't see any problem with the environmental clearance. But what's very striking is that the committee, the high part committee that was set up by the NGT, was rife with conflict of interest. So the members who were part of the committee were either project proponents or those who had given clearance to this particular project. Since the project proposal was made, there have been at least 14 new species discoveries from Great Nicobar Island, from the project sites. If you look at the March 2021 report that sets the stage for this project, it is entirely a commercial project. It is entirely a business opportunity that is articulated there. This lighthouse stands deep in the forest on the coastline of Great Nicobar Island. It is far above the high tide line. Now, why the lighthouse stands in water is because of the earthquake of December 2004. We are also sitting here in what is known as the Ring of Fire all along the Pacific Ocean, where maximum earthquakes happen, where maximum volcanoes are there, where tsunamis originate. And imagine putting in 50,000 crores on a coastline, which is seeing earthquakes almost a week on an average. 16,000 of these 20,000 coral colonies should be cut out and translocated to some other place. So the scientific merit of this is in deep question.
Hello and welcome to the Hindu. Great Nicobar Island, the southernmost point of India, is at the center of country's most ambitious and controversial infrastructure plans. Government wants to build a massive transshipment port, an international airport, a power plant, and a new township here as a part of the large development project. Supporters say it could transform India's strategic and economic presence in the Indian Ocean. But the scientists and conservationists warn that building such a large infrastructure on Great Nicobar Island could have serious ecological consequences and may even pose geological risk in regions shaped by events like 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. To understand what this project is and what it could mean for island's fragile ecosystem and why it has sparked such an intense debate, I am joined by Pankaj Sekhsaria, researcher and author who has written extensively about the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Um, Sir, for viewers who may be hearing about this for the first time, what exactly is the Great Nicobar Island Development Project and what does it aim to build?
So like you mentioned in the introduction, it's a hugely ambitious project that is proposed on Great Nicobar Island, which is the southernmost in the Andaman and Nicobar group, and also, like you mentioned, by extension, also in some senses, the southernmost landmass of India. The southernmost tip of Great Nicobar Island is a place known as Indira Point, which is technically the southernmost tip of India. So on this island, and there are 3 points I would like to make as an overarching kind of statement. One is this massive project that was proposed, started off in 2021. There was a project proposal and a report put out by AECOM India Private Limited on the request of Niti Aayog, which, again, as you mentioned, a project with 4 components: a massive transshipment port in the southern part of the island, a place known as Kalakia Bay, which is roughly half the investment that is proposed over there. There is a power plant, which of course is required. There is an international airport. And then there's a massive 130 square kilometers new township and tourism project that is there, which we will discuss later and needs to be highlighted. By official figures, entails the cutting down of 1 million trees. It could actually be 3 times or even 10 times that number. But I think just needs to be underlined the scale of deforestation that is officially proposed over there. Now, this
But the
project,
government is, sorry to interrupt you here, but the government is saying only few lakhs trees will be cut, right?
that's right. But so government in parliament has said 9 lakh trees. That's about 1 million. And scientists have said, and has been reported in the Hindu as well, that it could be 3 times the number, it could be 10 times the number, depending on what statistics you're using and given the density of a tropical evergreen forest like of the Nicobar Islands. So it is these 4 components. The initial proposal was pegged at about 70,000 crores, and it really is one of the largest investments in recent times in India as one individual project. The important point also to keep in mind is that within 4 years, and before work has even begun on the ground, this project estimate has already seen an escalation of about 25% in terms of the budget costs. So today we are talking of a 92,000 crore, 1 lakh crore project by official numbers. So why I underline this is because the scale of the project is something nobody has a sense of. And you can imagine what the scale and the investment will be if we have already seen a 25% escalation even before any work has started. And the third and important point, part of which you also mentioned in the introduction, is the complexity of the landscape, the sensitivity of the landscape in which this project is proposed to come. It is a pristine forest, certainly among the best in the country, if not among the best in the world. You have species, endemic species, unknown species, rare species that are found only on this island, nowhere else. We have indigenous communities, small numbers, vulnerable communities who have special guarantees under the constitution, whose land will be devastated, whose lives and cultures and languages will be devastated. And very importantly, we are sitting in a seismically very, very volatile zone. This is, as per the latest formulations in the Indian policy framework, this is a seismic zone 6, which is the most seismically active zone in the country. So, such a huge investment in such a diverse and fragile landscape, uh, and one would argue with very problematic clearance processes. So there is this massive project, one of the biggest, I think, in contemporary times, and in a landscape that is complex, diverse, and very difficult to work in as well.
Okay. Supporters of this project say that it is strategically important for India in the Indian Ocean region, considering countries like China. Uh, what what is government's argument for why this project is necessary?
So I think there are two arguments there. One is an economic rationale. It's very well articulated. This is the argument that is made all the time by all the supporters, including in media commentaries, without really actually looking at the details. It is what the state has and the government has said, what the project proponents are saying, and without much investigation, critique, uh, most of us are just restating what is being said by the project proponents. But having said that, there are two components. Uh, Great Nicobar Island sits in the extreme south. It sits on top of what is known as the Malacca Straits, through which a huge amount of shipping traffic of the world transits. And the idea of a transshipment port is to mobilize that location to be able to draw traffic from that shipping lane into Indian territory and perhaps make some financial gains and save costs where transshipment is concerned. So that is one logic. The other, of course, is we are again sitting on the same Malacca Straits, and it is strategically important from a defense kind of perspective. So these are the two broad logics that have been articulated again and again and again. And I might also underline here that in the project proposal itself, there is almost no mention of the strategic and defense component of this project because it is not there. If you look at the March 2021 report that sets the stage for this project, it is entirely a commercial project. It is entirely a business opportunity that is articulated there. And even if you look at the four components of this project, the port, which is a transshipment commercial port, a township, a tourism township, and a new township, which is also nothing to do with defense. The airport, when first proposed, was an international commercial airport. It was much later that this was made a dual purpose airport where defense and commercial use. So the project proposals, the reality on the ground and in the documents does not map onto the arguments of the strategic, because even and a number of commentators have repeatedly said that this is a commercial project, and there are people in the ex-defense establishment who have written publicly, including in the Hindu and other papers and in interviews, that even if there was a strategic angle, there might be other ways of doing it, not at the cost that this whole project is going to bring about. So there is there's the economic rationale, which is questioned, which has been questioned in articles in the frontline and other commentators of the very detailed economic analysis, and says that the numbers don't add up. And then there is the strategic argument, which I've said is not actually central to the proposal in the first place.
Before we talk about the risks, can you help us understand why Great Nicobar Island is considered ecologically unique or sensitive?
This is actually at the heart of the concerns that a lot of people have raised. The island is about a 920 square kilometer island, which by mainland standards is a very small piece of land, but it is one of the largest islands in this island archipelago. Uh, about 850 to 900 square kilometers of this island today is even today tropical evergreen forest that has never been kind of disturbed. It is home today of only about 6-7,000 people, of which 1,000 people or roughly 1,000 people are indigenous communities. One is a Champagne community and the other is the Great Nicobaris. And then there are about 5-6,000 settlers who were brought in here about 4 decades ago in a story that's actually very interesting and which has not been discussed much. So we are talking of a landscape that is large, that is largely pristine tropical evergreen forest, which is also home to two indigenous communities who have special rights, who have special needs, because they are completely dependent on the natural resources, and any disturbance, destruction also has a very direct implication on their lives and livelihoods. Now, where the forest is concerned, uh, it is absolutely undeniably rich where biodiversity is concerned. There's also a case like is known of the unknown unknowns. This is an area that has not been researched enough, and any detailed study that takes place actually discovers new species of plants, animals, stuff like that. So we are talking of an undescribed, unresearched landscape, and if the project comes up, we're going to lose a substantial amount of that diversity. Just in the last 5 years, since the project proposal was made, there have been at least 40 new species discoveries from Great Nicobar Island, from the project sites, right from crabs to insects to geckos to snakes, even a bird. As a matter of fact, I had written a piece in the Hindu just a couple of months ago where just in the month of November, there are two new species discoveries and descriptions from the project site where the project is going to come up in Great Nicobar. And a large part of the forest remains unexplored. So we are talking of an absolutely biodiversity hotspot of extreme richness. The coastline here is very rich. The marine landscapes and marine seascapes are very rich, not studied enough. Uh, Galathea Bay, where the project is going to come up, is believed to be the most important nesting site in the northern Indian Ocean of the giant leatherback turtle. This project site will be completely devastated. Turtles will not be able to come to nest here. And so, this ecological sensitivity is just the kind of tip of the iceberg that I'm talking about. We don't even know what is there. Uh, and because of this richness, this large part of this island is a UNESCO biosphere reserve. There were two national parks, one wildlife sanctuary. So everything suggests that the ecological richness of this place is unprecedented, and all of that now stands at risk if this project is allowed over here.
Since you touched upon the environmental concerns they have, what are the major environmental concerns scientists and conservationists like you have raised about the impact of this project on the forest and the biodiversity and the coastal ecosystem in the island?
So we might need to divide this into two or three parts, because one is that you're going to cut down, like I said, about 130 square kilometers of tropical evergreen forest. Uh, 1 lakh trees, 1 million trees could be 10 million trees, and all the biodiversity with that will be gone. Now, there of course is an argument that people make, oh, this is not so important in the larger context. But that's also a perspective that not everybody agrees with, and it's a matter of how people look at what is important. Uh, uh, the the strange and the very funny part is that this compensation, there's a proposal for compensating this cutting of forests by declaring twice the area of land as forest in Haryana, which is a completely bizarre kind of ecological idea, and although it is bureaucratically and otherwise been accepted. So imagine cutting down 130 square kilometers of tropical evergreen forest. As an example, as a comparison, this is a area larger than the Sanjay Gandhi National Park in the city of Mumbai. Now, we all say that Sanjay Gandhi National Park is like is a jewel in the crown of Mumbai. In a megapolis of this kind, we have a rich biodiversity, forests, carbon sinks, water. Everything comes from that forest. So this area is more than that, for instance. Where the coastal ecosystems are concerned, like I mentioned, uh, this is a very rich coastal system again. Uh, the beaches here are the nesting sites of four species of sea turtles. The giant leatherback, the largest of the seven species of sea turtles, nests on the beaches here. And in Galathea, very large numbers of nestings are taking place every nesting season for the last 4 or 5 years. This is CRZ1A, which is the highest protection that is granted. So from every angle that we look at it, from what we know, and like we discussed, from what we don't know, we will be destroying forests and species that have never been documented. So we will not even know what has been lost. So that's kind of broadly the environmental angle. Also, issues of what happens to this ecology when these projects take off, because part of the project, because you have to create this township and inhabit it and have people to work, there's a proposal to bring in 3.5 lakh people from outside to settle on this island. So questions of where will water for them come, where will other resources come, what will happen to the sewage that is generated, what will happen to the waste that is generated. So those environmental implications have also not been considered at all. So both from a biodiversity perspective and from air, water quality and things like that, serious questions actually should be asked.
The another issue that comes up in terms of the geological vulnerability is how risky is it to build such a large infrastructure in that area which is already affected by 2004 tsunami and also sits on a seismical zone 6 which is also active. So what are the risks that we are talking about here?
So this is absolutely central and a big concern. Now, for a reference, I would like to draw your attention to the lighthouse at Indira Point. So the southernmost tip of India, there is a lighthouse that stands there. And if you look at the pictures that are coming today, you see this lighthouse standing in the water. This lighthouse is standing in water, surrounded by the water of the Andaman Sea. If you look at a picture pre 2004, which is when the tsunami, but more importantly, the earthquake happened, and there are some pictures that are available. This lighthouse stands deep in the forest on the coastline of Great Nicobar Island. It is far above the high tide line. Now, why the lighthouse stands in water is because of the earthquake of December 2004, not so much the tsunami. And this is a very important geological reality of this landscape. When the earthquake of 2004 happened, even before the tsunami is supposed to have struck, the island, many islands in the Nicobar group saw permanent subsidence. So Indira Point and where the coastline where this project is coming up saw a permanent subsidence of about 15 feet the morning of that earthquake and tsunami. So a lighthouse that was standing above the high tide line is now standing in water. Now imagine 15 feet of the change of the coastline of that island. Now, it is exactly on this landscape, maybe a few kilometers from where the lighthouse stands, where the project is going to come up. And this is a landscape where there are regular earthquakes. We are also sitting here in what is known as the Ring of Fire, all along the Pacific Ocean, where maximum earthquakes happen, where maximum volcanoes are there, where tsunamis originate. And imagine putting in 50,000 crores on a coastline which is seeing earthquakes almost a week on an average. 4, 5, 6 on the Richter scale, 9 on the Richter scale, which was the earthquake of 2004. And just imagine a situation where once again the land is uplifted or it is subsiding because of the earthquake activity. Then your port will not remain a port anymore. So what happens to the risk? Who's going to take the risk of that investment? And also, one important point to keep in mind is we are bringing in 300,000 people from outside. Are we not putting them at risk? What about their vulnerability? Who will take responsibility if anything happens to them? Are we not putting them in harm's way? So, if for a moment we even forgot the biodiversity and tribal rights, just the investment is at huge risk because of the volatility of this landscape. And I think it's a lot of people have raised this question. Very senior geologists, researchers uh, have asked this question, and we don't seem to get a very good answer about it.
We haven't touched upon the indigenous community that live there. Uh, what could this project mean for those indigenous community of the island, particularly the Champagne people? And what kind of impact do you think these people are going to face? Like, for example, there are speculation that, for example, these people are self-sufficient, self-reliant, and if, like you mentioned, people are coming and getting relocated there, will you think there is a possibility that the community is forced towards extinction because they may or may not be able to handle the kind of viruses or the bacteria that the people getting relocated will bring?
I think you partly also partly answered the question. See the fact that they have been living here for thousands of years, the Shompen particularly seems to suggest they are a small community. They have been living in the forest and they seem to be managing all right. We know very little about that community. There's not much interaction with them. Even their settlements have not been mapped out. They live remote. They are pretty much outside of contact of the larger world, and they are living in a way that they have lived, as far as we know, as they have been doing for thousands of years. Now, imagine this small community being there. Also, the island is a tribal reserve by Indian law. It was created as a tribal reserve to protect the rights of these people, and now 300,000 people, 3 lakh people will come to this landscape. So, for one Shompen, today there are 300, there will be thousands of outsiders for every single Shompen individual in that landscape. So, just by sheer proportion, the demands that these people will have on the resources, on the land, on the water, the fact that there will be interaction, that they will enter the forests of the Shompen, that even if we put rules and draw boundaries and put fences, it's going to be impossible to stop 3 lakh people from going outside what is, you know, designated as land for these people. So, of course, there will be an impact on disease, and there is evidence of this from all over the world, including in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, that the indigenous communities have suffered very badly when outsiders come. Risks of disease, risks of cultural annihilation, languages could be lost. So absolutely very big concern on what happens to them generally, but also on the violation of their very fundamental rights, rights that have been guaranteed under the Constitution. So that is one aspect. The other is the Nicobari tribal community that lives on the coastline. They are far more engaged with the outside world, but they have also repeatedly said that they are very worried about what this project will do to their culture, to their lands, to everything that they hold important. See, these people were displaced in the tsunami of 2004 and brought into shanty towns in what is Campbell Bay, the administrative headquarters. For 20 years, they've been wanting to go back to their lands, and that has not been facilitated. So they have become internally displaced people, and it seems they will remain internally displaced forever, but there's no reason for that. When, yes, there was a damage and destruction that took place in 2004, but that is 20 years ago. The people want to go back. They have a connection to their lands. They are happy going back. So there is absolutely no reason why anybody should not be allowed to go back to lands that belong to them and that they have always lived in.
So you mentioned about all these problems that could possibly impact the island and the people living there, but yet the National Green Tribunal has given it a green signal to the project. Can you please help us understand what exactly is the role of National Green Tribunal and what exactly does the institution do, and why has the clearance process of this whole project been so controversial?
So the National Green Tribunal is a body set up by the Government of India where uh, matters related to the environment can be adjudicated. So if there are environmental clearances and things like that, or there is violation, then this is the kind of legal body that can take action, that can demand action, and things like that. So, in many cases, this is the first port of call for citizens about concerns on the environment, and there are many cases of various kinds before the NGT. So, similarly, when this project was granted environmental clearance, so it's largely about environmental clearance. There are other matters in this project that are also under question, but in different legal bodies. So, and maybe we can come to that later. For example, violation of the rights under the Forest Rights Act of the indigenous people, also the forest clearance that has been granted. But here we are basically talking about something called the environmental clearance. That is one of the primary clearances granted to a project by the Ministry of Environment and Forests. So the environmental clearance was granted in November of 2022, and subsequently raising a number of concerns, both scientific, technical, and procedural. People had approached the National Green Tribunal to say that there are serious problems in this clearance for some of the reasons that we have just spoken a short while ago. So, for instance, this whole thing of the forest, the cutting down of lakhs of trees, the compensation in Haryana, the fact that the coastline here is very sensitive, that we have endemic species here, that this is a geologically very volatile zone. All these questions were raised before the NGT, and unfortunately, now we are seeing a lot of commentary on that as well, including in newspapers, magazines, where, of course, there are supporters of the NGT order. So, but there are also a lot of people who have raised serious concerns. So, what the NGT did is to say that it basically dismissed the concerns raised by the petitioner, saying that your concerns are not valid because all of this has been taken care of by the government and in the environmental clearance procedures. So that is where the matter is. Now, there are details within this that need to be looked into, and I might just highlight two in the sense of both procedural concerns and whether it has actually looked at the scientific facts, which is what a lot of people have been arguing. So one of the things that is very striking is that when the NGT passed a first order in April of 2023, which basically said that they don't see any problem with the environmental clearance, but they did highlight three aspects for which they set up a high-part committee. Now, these three aspects were related to what is known as CRZ-1A area. It is related to the presence of corals where the port site is there. And there was also concerns about relying on just one season data for giving environmental clearance. Now, eventually, this is also not accounted for in the final order. But what's very striking is that the committee, the high-part committee that was set up by the NGT, was rife with conflict of interest. So the members who were part of the committee were either project proponents or those who had given clearance to this particular project. So the chair of the committee was the Ministry of Environment and Forest Secretary. And who has given environmental clearance? It is the same ministry. So it is, you see the irony, right? There is the fact that my orders or my work is being questioned, and I am allowed and I am asked to sit in judgment of your challenge to my work. And that's across the board, all the members. So Environment Ministry, the Niti Aayog representative, the Niti Aayog is one of the biggest, has the biggest interest in this. The local administration, Andaman and Nicobar administration, which is actually the project proponent, and institutions like the Wildlife Institute of India and others, who are actually were part of the clearance process and also stand to gain huge amount of money that is now being made available to do ecological studies of the landscape where ecological destruction will take place. So money to the tunes of hundreds of crores is being made available to institutions to study the ecology of this landscape, where they first helped in the clearance and now they will be damaged and they'll be monitoring this. So all the people who are adjudicating on complaints are those who have an interest in the project. So there's first very clear conflict of interest. The second is, and like many commentators include lawyers have said, is the NGT has not looked at the merits of this whole matter. They've gone by a very technical approach and they have relied on the project proponents and on the environmental clearance that itself was under question. So the question is that there's a problem with the environmental clearance. The response is no, the environmental clearance is okay because these matters have been dealt with. So you're not looking at the merits of the matter. And I might just give two examples to illustrate that. One is the fact that where the port is coming up, Galathea Bay, has about 20,000 coral colonies, which is mentioned in the EI report, which is acknowledged in the NGT order, and the EC, the environmental clearance, actually lays down a condition for the clearance that 16,000 of these 20,000 coral colonies should be cut out and translocated to some other place. So the scientific merit of this is in deep question. Ecologists around the world, there's very little evidence to say that translocation at this scale actually works. So that's one aspect. But the very fact that the coral has to be relocated suggests that there is coral presence in this particular landscape. And the presence of coral in Indian law indicates that this area has to be what is known as CRZ1A, in which a port is not allowed. So if there is coral, then it is CRZ1A, and if it is CRZ1A, you can't construct a port. So how could such a fundamental reality, such a fundamental scientific fact be ignored by the NGT? And the second, quickly, is that the beach at Galathia Bay is the nesting site, like we discussed, of the leatherback turtle. Again, turtle nesting beaches automatically come under the category of CRZ1A, under which a port cannot actually be allowed. Now, you have proposed a port in that bay, and turtles are still nesting even as we speak. The latest figures from 2024, the nesting season of 2024, and statistics by the Forest Department show that in that nesting year, there were 600 leatherback nestings on that beach, which is the highest ever recorded in the history of studies on that island. So in 2022, 2023, 2024, on an average, 600 leatherback nestings are taking place on this beach. And if leatherbacks are nesting, then this is CRZ1A. And if this is CRZ1A, then you cannot have a port over here. How could the National Green Tribunal, whose mandate is to look at environmental issues, not consider these scientific facts? So there are, I think, deeply problematic ignorance of scientific facts on the ground and the procedural matters. So what is the basis on which the NGT has given the order? I think is something that needs to be looked at very, very carefully and very, very deeply.
One last question. Given that everything we know as of now, what are the questions that a policymaker should be asking themselves before they move ahead with this? The additional question apart from this is there is a Kolkata High Court hearing on the same issue. How hopeful are you about it?
So yes, one is hopeful. I'm not involved in the litigation. There are other people who have gone to court. So there are two kinds of matters before the Calcutta High Court. One is related to the violation of the tribal rights and violation of the provisions of the Forest Rights Act, which is a very serious violation, and there's a lot of evidence of that. And again, it has been reported in the Hindu and in the Frontline. There's a very detailed and excellent article recently by lawyer T. Mohan who talks about the details of how the violation of the process has taken place. So, like I was discussing the questions on the constitution of the committee by the High Part Committee by the NGT, one also looks at the process by which the forest rights clearance was granted, and you see that committees have been constituted which have members that should not be part of that committee. There is not enough and adequate representation of the tribal communities as per the provisions of the law. So you have gone ahead and constituted committees that are not complete, that are violative of the law, and you've granted clearance. So that is one of the issues. And then there are other ecological issues similar to the ones that we discussed on what happened suddenly. How can we bring this project to a landscape where there are coral reefs, for instance? So some of those ecological matters in one issue and the tribal rights matter in the other issue. So we'll have to wait and watch how the court responds. I think the case is very strong and the matter is very important. And to your first part of the question, I think we have to all think about what is the scale of what is being proposed, what is the uniqueness, what is the singularity of this place. It is, we've been saying, a project of national importance, but I don't think there's anything more important and nationally more important than the uniqueness and the richness of this place. You have, like I said, forests, biodiversity, peoples, cultures, which are nothing else in the world. Today, in an era of climate change, what does it mean to say that we will cut down 3 million, 5 million trees? What is going to be the benefit of that? In an era of rising seas, what will happen to coastal projects? in this particular case, with so much tectonic activity, what is the risk that we are putting this investment, this infrastructure, and the people to? And from all available evidence, and like we've discussed in the beginning, this is not going to work out economically. It's very unlikely. That's what the numbers don't seem to add up. The fact that the cost of the project is escalating so rapidly, 25% in 4 years before work has started. What are the final projections in investment? Who will invest? Who will take the risk? So I think this needs to be seriously reconsidered, because everything that is at stake, everything that's valuable, economic investment, infrastructure, people, biodiversity, uh, I think we are all putting that to risk for benefits that don't seem to be commensurate with the losses that will happen. Even a very basic cost benefit analysis does not suggest that this is going to be viable. And we will lose among the most beautiful, most precious uh, landscape that this country has. And a lot of us don't think it is worth it.
Thank you for talking to us, sir. It was a very insightful conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on this conversation.